You're listening to Wyrd Realities, the destination of choice for those inquisitive minds seeking to find that special place where myth, science, history, and folklore intersect. Where we interview authors, podcasters, content creators, and filmmakers to discuss their work and projects, as well as dive deep into the weird things that capture our imaginations and stimulate our minds. Wyrd Realities is a Nightcallers production made possible by Lauren Smith, producer, with audio and visual by Beaverhook Productions.
Hey, this is Hadley Thorne, and I am here today with Mr. Scott Baker, the author of the Nurse Alissa vs. the Zombie series and so much more. Scott, I had no idea you had so many books under your belt.
Well, it was funny. I went to a convention. I was at Northeast Comic-Con this past weekend, and I haven't been to a convention since October 2019. And I'm putting all the books on the table, and I'm thinking to myself, I have no room in this table. Then it suddenly even dawned on me. It's like, holy crap, I have a lot of books out there. I wrote so many during the pandemic, I didn't realize it.
Well, you've got a lot. And that's one of the reasons I think you are one of my favorite people, is you really have a great imagination. And I often get tickled when you post stuff because I see exactly what captured your attention with it and where you're going. So I'm super excited to talk with you today.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Well, you are a very busy man. So you just got back from your first convention since the pandemic kind of, I guess, ended in a way, or things have opened back up.
Right. Yeah.
So how was that? Did you have a lot of traffic?
It was a phenomenal. So many, because it was the first 3-day convention in this area since, I think, January 2020. And everybody was so excited to be there. I mean, you could just feel the energy. And what really surprised me and a lot of the vendors was there were so many people who this was their first convention. They said, you know, we were stuck in the house and we heard about conventions and we read about them and it sounded fun and we thought we'd give it a try. But we had a much larger turnout than anyone expected. Almost everyone, I mean, it was one of my best book sale weekends in a long time. It was just a great fun. People were dressed up as cosplay. And I love the cosplayers because some of them are just so imaginative.
I have a good friend that I met her doing historical reenactment. And she moved to New Orleans and she's gotten into cosplay now and she goes all the time and she comes up with some crazy stuff and I love to watch it. I love the makeup and the costumes and to see what people can do. It's just amazing.
I mean, I love it when they take a simple one of my favorite, and you can, if you go to my Facebook page, you can see it. It was a guy walking around as Thor from the beginning of Endgame. He was wearing slippers, sweatpants. He had a bathrobe, a t-shirt, and he's walking around with the long, scraggly beard, hair, and mustache, and the hammer. It was ingenious, and yet he was the most comfortable cosplayer there.
I know that we've talked before, but let's just kind of tell our audience a little bit about your background. What got you interested in writing horror?
I'd actually started writing back in the 1990s. I was writing espionage. I was a member of the CIA. You know, they always say, write what you know. I wrote 2 books that were horrendous. I won't even let my wife read them. They were so bad. But the 3rd book was a really good book. It was about North Korea planting 5 nuclear weapons in the United States and telling the United States, if you do not abandon South Korea so we can take it over, we're going to detonate them. I had it with a major publisher. My agent was excited. Everything was going great. And then 9/11 hit. And the bottom fell out of that market. So I spent a few years hiatus, joining the war on terrorism. And then around 2003, you know, when I came back from Iraq, I wanted to write something different. And I've always loved horror. I mean, I've been reading and I always read and watch horror movies since I was a little kid. And a friend of mine said to me, she says, well, you love horror. Why don't you jump into that genre? So I did. I wrote a few short stories. I wrote The Vampire Hunters, got them published. And after that, it's just like that was my niche.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to read some of your other books. I read Nurse Alissa versus the Zombies, the first book,
Mhm.
but I'm really intrigued by the Vampire Hunters and the Ghost of Salem. That's your newest book, right?
Ghost of Salem Village. And it was a labor of love. I love that book. I went to Salem State College. I worked at the Essex Institute, which appears in the book, for 2 years. So I got to learn a lot about Salem history. And I just thought, what a great way to tie a evil entity to the horrors of the Salem witchcraft trials back in 1692. And I don't dramatize it. I know a lot of books, a lot of movies make things up. I did a lot of really good research. So when you do the flashback scenes to the trials and the executions, they're as accurate as possible. But everything dealing with the evil entity, that's all fiction.
Supposedly.
Yeah.
No, I find that those are the best books, and because you're not just creating art for people to consume, but it also is teaching them and educating them as well.
I do enjoy doing that, and it was a horrific period. I mean, these people weren't evil. They were so messed up in their head for so many reasons that a small group of teenage girls was able to put hundreds of people in jail and send 18 to their deaths. And then when it was all done, everybody was just so like, yeah, okay, it happened. Let's move on.
Do you think something like that could happen today?
Oh, yes. More so today than back then. I worry about it much more now because just social media has just gotten to the point, all of these controversies that you see popping up on the news. I don't like what this person said. It's one person with 18 followers. And then the next thing you know, there's this whole social trend against this person or this organization. Oh, I think it could easily happen again. Sadly, but it's possible.
When there was a lot of stuff going around the election, one of these, and I keep track with like field survival stuff because I have no idea what I'm doing, but these guys do. So I watch their YouTube channels and kind of learn stuff to put in my books. And there was a witch hunt for one of these guys. They were saying he was racist, and it turns out he's like half Korean, Yeah. And then CNN was going to do this big story, and when they found out that there wasn't a story there, because they were saying that it was like a militia and they was creating a militia, and it was nothing. And when CNN found out there was no story there, they just pulled the plug. But he had backers that pulled off because of this false information that got out. And it was really just to hear his story as it unfolded. It was, like I said, it's someone who is, their mother was an immigrant to our country. It wasn't.
And it happens on both sides. I mean, look at the case of Richard Jewell, the guy who was accused of being the Atlanta bomber.
Yeah, no one knows that he wasn't the Atlanta bomber.
Yeah, I mean, that was the U.S. government making that mistake. That wasn't just some guy hiding in his basement and, posted on YouTube because they weren't friends in high school.
Yeah, it's crazy. And that's one of the things I don't watch a lot of news on television anymore. I think I've told you before my background. I have a degree in history. My undergraduate's in history. And I always try and look at 5 different trusted resources before I make a decision on something. But I'm finding that there's just not that many trusted resources out there anymore.
No, there isn't. I read a lot, and then I just sort of read between the lines. Because you have to, because CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, they all have their biases. What I do is I find 1 or 2 reporters who I like, who I trust, who I think are reliable, and then I'll listen to them, and then get their perspective on things. But unfortunately, today there's very the days of Walter Cronkite and Dan Rather and that are gone.
Yeah.
Now it's political commentators posing as journalists.
So sad. But let's get back to horror. I'll go down.
Okay.
I'll go down a rabbit hole with that.
Horror, modern politics.
No kidding. The worst kind, the most terrible of them all. So where are you what are you doing next? What's your next project you're going to work on?
I am currently working on. I'm trying to finish up Frozen World. It's a non-zombie post-apocalyptic novel. It deals with. It's a great freeze, and I'm not getting political, but it's the world governments try to stop global warming and actually go in the other direction. And there's this one underground facility that survives. And the story is based on Maya, early 20s. She joins the Defense Forces. It's a very utopian society. People live well. But as the book goes on, she finds out there's a lot going on behind the scenes that shatters her reality of what utopia is like. And unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately, I'm finding that the more I get into the book, it goes from being very upbeat to like really dark, brooding, and horrible, which means I still got it. I'm also working on Nurse Alissa 8. I'm working on another zombie series that's going to be an offshoot of Nurse Alissa. It's, I might as well tell you, it's based on Paul, her estranged husband.
Oh.
That she's wondering if he'll ever get to the cabin. He's stuck out west when the outbreak begins. So it's his adventures and how he survives, being more of a prepper than she is. How does he survive being caught out in the open, nowhere near home, when it hits the fan?
I'm intrigued.
Oh, it's good. It's a little bit more, not a lot, but it's a little bit more Dead Rising than Nurse Alissa versus the zombies. But I still keep it realistic. And I'm going to continue with the Tatiana series. That book was hugely popular at the last convention. I almost sold out all of my Tatiana books.
Awesome.
So I'm going to continue with that series. I'm thinking she's either going to do a cruise ship or a haunted sanitarium. And then I brushed off another book I was working on, and I put it aside because I think in today's environment, I think it would just be hopefully a bestseller. It's called Operation Majestic, and I describe it as Raiders of the Lost Ark versus Back to the Future with aliens.
I can't wait.
It's a fun book. It really is. I started that about 2 years ago and then put it aside, but now it's like I'm dying to get back to it.
So I have to ask, what was your inspiration for it?
Part of the inspiration is, I've been working in the background on a series, OSS, Office of Supernatural Services, which is the British and the American intelligence fighting Nazi occultism in World War II. I want to get several books written in that before I start releasing it, and I'm so busy with the other ones. But during the research, there was so many prominent Nazis in the occult. All the women, Maria and all the others of the Vril Society, disappeared after the end of the war. Nobody knows what happened to them. Hans Kammler, who was the head of Hitler's scientific community, he was the one that oversaw the U2, the V2, the V1, the V2 programs. He's the one that supposedly oversaw the Hitler's attempt at a nuclear weapon, and his name is related to all the Glocka and the Nazi UFOs. He disappeared after the war without a trace. So I started thinking to myself, well, how could I fit this in? And I came up with this idea that the Germans, the Nazis, figured out a way to go back in time before the end of the war and changed history, so they actually won World War II.
I'm totally vested in this.
Yes, but what I do is I take all of these historical aspects, all of these things that are part of that pseudo history that we haven't been, like Roswell and that, and I weld it into one story that will have this like really awesome conclusion.
Well, I can't wait. So how long do I have to wait for that one? That's a fascinating story.
Hopefully not long. I did about 40,000 words in it already. And the minute I finish Frozen World, I'm jumping right back into that one. So I'm kind of hoping I can get that one out by Christmas.
So how do you manage writing multiple books at the same time?
Poorly. No, I thought I could do it because I had this brilliant idea that, like most brilliant ideas, wasn't that if I got stuck on one book, I could just jump over to another one, which worked for about 2 months until I got stuck on all three of them. So I figured, okay, concentrate. Which one have I the farthest in? So I'm concentrating on that one. I'm going to get Operation Majestic out of the way. I may finish off Nurse Alissa 8 because it's been a few months since I've done anything on that one. Then I'll jump back in and do Paul. The Chronicles of Paul is that zombie offshoot, and I'll do the next Tatiana book.
Well, it sounds like you've got a lot of really interesting things going on.
Oh, I got a lot of things going on.
I'm excited. Like I said, I want to dive into some of your other books because I think that I'm really interested in the worlds that you're building, and I just can't wait. But Paul's journey already gets me because my greatest fear is that something like that would happen when I was on vacation, and I'd be somewhere I didn't know how to get around, and can you imagine being dropped off in a foreign country? You don't speak the language, so yeah, that's my fear.
Yeah, he's on a trip to the Midwest, and I can't even remember. See, this is what happens when you write 5 books. I can't remember what city he's in when it breaks out. He doesn't have any firearms with him. You can't carry them on planes, so he has to adapt. He has to take whatever weapons he can think of. He has to improvise weapons across the way. And then, of course, he meets a whole bunch of interesting characters. And there's going to be a lot of death, a lot of destruction. And the end of that one, I have got probably one of the most scariest raising the hair on the back of your neck scenes planned.
What's that?
I can't say because it's going to be one of those surprise endings. It's going to be one of those, oh my God, how are they going to get across that?
Oh. Well, I can't wait. So I don't know which one's going to be my first read. I'm about to finish up the book that I'm on, and I want to dive into your Ghost of Salem Village book. So what's your favorite book you've written?
I have to say it is the Vampire Hunters trilogy. It was my first published horror. Well, it was my first published book, period. But the main character is a fantasy of me. He's a charge ahead without thinking, cigar smoking, whiskey drinking, iced coffee drinking type of guy with a really sick sense of humor. His partner, Allison Monroe, she's the smart one. She's the one that thinks things through. She's the one that plans ahead. She's the one that's always saving his ass when he gets into trouble. And then the kid, Delmarco, he's there because he has to be. Oh, and they're all backed by the government. There's this like secret person in the government who's sending them all this money, who's backing them up because this person believes in vampires and wants these people to stop them. And the story itself is great. Again, I'm like I majored in history, so I do a lot of historical flashback scenes throughout the 3 books.
In the research, and I told you, that's one of the reasons you're one of my favorite peoples, because I see how your mind works a little bit, and I identify. So, Yeah, I might have to read the vampire series first because I've really been wanting to read about vampires lately.
Mhm.
So I might dive into that.
And there's two sets of vampires in it. There's what we call the snuffies. Those are the ones from like Blade 3, Blade 3, the other vampires from 30 Days a Night. They're monsters. They're always in vampire form. All they do is eat. And then there's the masters, the ones that can turn. During the day they look normal. During the night they can look normal, but when they want to eat, they turn into this more grotesque vampire.
Interesting.
And then I introduce at one point the master, the main vampire, the vampire of all vampires.
The big evil.
Well, I try to give one thing I don't like about a lot of vampire stories is, except for Twilight, except for Anne Rice, they're two-dimensional characters. They're monsters. That's one of the things I liked about Van Helsing. There was depth. There was a story behind Dracula. I give all my vampires stories. Why are they a vampire? Why do they think the way they do? Like I have one young vampire in the books who had been in Salem in the 1690s. She had been molested and turned when she was about 9 by vampires. So she uses her childness. She uses, being a 9-year-old to lure good people in to kill them.
Ooh. That's dark and twisted, Scott Baker.
It is very dark and twisted, and thank you for the compliment.
I love it. What's your Waterworld series about?
Waterworld was my first zombie series. I loved zombie books. I, just finished reading Brian Keene's, a bunch of others, but I wanted to put a different take on it. Because, I didn't want every zombie book, ooh, they're rising from the dead, shoot them in the head, ooh, we survived, until the next book. So I came up with the concept of what if vampires set up the zombie virus. The idea being, if humans are fighting zombies, they're not hunting vampires. With the flaw that zombies ate vampires and humans. They don't care. It was flesh. So a small band of humans and vampires joined together to survive the apocalypse. And then things happen throughout the book, because, vampires and humans aren't going to get along unless they have to. But as the books progress, you see friendships develop. You see the hatred between the two groups start to form. And I also deal with one of the groups in the first book who separates later. They find themselves fighting the war to push back the zombies. And yes, only one side. There is a winner in the book, but you have to read it to find out which side.
No spoilers. Awesome. Well, that sounds really good too. I can tell that you're a big history buff just from what you're telling me. So, and those are the books that I like to read. I like to dig into something that's a little bit deeper than some of the things that are out there.
Well, that was also the concept behind Nazi Ghouls from Space. Though that one, I got to admit, that's my daughter's creation. My wife and I used to love the movie. I don't know if you ever saw it, Red Snow. Bunch of kids go to Norway looking for hidden Nazi gold, but it's defended by zombie SS officers. And it starts serious and gets stupid. And my wife and I were saying there's nothing cooler than Nazi zombies. And my daughter piped in, what about Nazi zombies from space? So with that book, I tie in the entire Werner von Braun rocket program and how the Nazis are trying to build a ballistic missile, or it's more like they're trying to build a suicide missile, manned with German soldiers to fly and bomb the United States. And things go horribly wrong. And then I don't want to give anything away, but it's a short, very short book. But as you go through the book, I start weaving history into it, and it's funny as hell.
I can't
wait. Twilight of the Living Dead was just something I wanted to do. It's late April 1945, and Berlin falls to a dead army rather than the Red Army.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna have to go get all your books now. It's a good thing I got me a Kindle. So,
Thank you.
But I just can't wait, and I'm so glad that you've joined the Wyrd Realities team. I don't know if we haven't really had a chance to really talk any, but
No,
I know that you get the weird and you get the purpose of it, and I started this as a way to kind of talk to people about the weird stuff that inspires me, to find out what weird stuff inspires them, and it's grown into this thing. And I'm so happy that you and Jeff and Alan and Jamie have joined the team, because it's weird and we're having a lot of fun, I think.
it is. And what I love about it is it's not like Ancient Aliens where everything is alien related. I sit there, my wife watches the show, and I say to myself, so aliens only showed up on Earth in 1947, but you see them in the Mayan civilization. When we talk about something, we debate it. Is it a possibility? Could it have happened? Could it have not happened? I like that, because, one of the things was I always used to believe we went to the moon, and I still do. But the more I read the theories about we didn't go to the moon, certain things click with me that I can't answer. And it's just it just keeps the mind going. It does sometimes make you wonder.
Well, the more you learn, the more questions you have. And that's the thing that I love about the conspiracy theories. And I'm not going to say I buy into them, but I like to read them.
Oh, yeah.
Because these people, they do a lot of research on this stuff. And, there's some solid points that they make. Mm-hmm. It's fascinating to me. It's like all the stuff with the Nazis and the fact that there are key people who disappeared. That's always fascinated me, and there's so many holes you can fall into when you're learning that stuff. And it's, like I said, it hits that creative, imagination part, and it just stimulates that. You can just do so much with it.
Oh, so. Yeah, it's great. I've used so many of those theories and that are in Operation Majestic. And the funny thing is, you sit there and you think, well, can I tie this to this to this?
I'm going to wrap this up, and we'll do it again sometime soon. Okay, the next time you've got a book release, let's do it. And I'm going to read some more in the meantime, so I'll be more wrapped up on your novels that you have.
All right, it sounds good. And thank you so much for letting me be a member of the team. I'm having a great time here.
Oh, we're happy that you're here. We all just love you so much.
Thank you.
Finley was telling me yesterday she could just listen to you talk forever. I said, I know, he's so fascinating. So we've got a good team, and we're really happy that you're on board.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Well, and can you tell our listeners where they can find you online?
The best place to follow me is on Facebook, Scott Baker's Demon Hunters. That's where I spend most of my time. That's where I'm always posting stupid stuff. I do behind the scenes Tuesdays. I do Wednesday inspiration for writers. It's where I talk about my books, what's going to come out, conventions I'm going to. For aspiring writers, if you want to reach out to me and ask me a question, I welcome it. May take me a day or two to get to you, so don't be offended. But, I had a lot of pretty big names helping me when I entered the business, and I agreed to pay it forward. So aspiring writers, I love talking with you guys and girls and, helping you along. I'm on Twitter at vampire-hunters. And, of course, you can get all my books, Scott M. Baker, on Amazon.
Yes. And I'll be sure to post links in the description below. So
all right.
Be sure to like this video, hit the thumbs up, and subscribe to our channel so you can get up to date whenever we drop new stuff, and you'll be seeing a lot more of Scott because we've got big plans for him at Wyrd Realities. So we'll
Thank
talk
you.
soon.
All right. Bye.
That's going to do it, guys. Wyrd Realities has some great programming coming up, so be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and set your notifications to alert you when we upload new content. Until next time, you can find me on Twitter at Shay_Tully, and you can find Hadley at all the usual places at Hadley Thorne. And you can stay up to date to all of our stuff via Linktree/Wyrd Realities. Till next time, stay weird.